Hey guys, welcome back. So this is going to be a little talk on tornadoes. So again, I did send a PowerPoint. I also sent the notes as well. So that's kind of what I'm going to be going from, and also through some of the PowerPoints. It's not going to be word for word though of the notes, so do pay attention. I also sent you, at least I hope I did, and I'll go back and check, a link to a video. It's a documentary on a major tornado outbreak that took place now about 9 years ago, but it's pretty good. It's about 30 minutes or so if you want to watch that. And also, of course, there will be a paper on this as well, so we'll talk about that at the very end of this kind of video series. Probably be 1, 2, maybe even 3 little short videos on tornadoes, but this is number 1. So we will go on and kind of get started here about tornadoes. And the actual definition of a tornado is a violent rotating column of air extending from a thunderstorm to the ground. So it's a violent rotating column of air extending from the thunderstorm to the ground. And the main key in that sentence is to the ground. If it is not on the ground, touching the ground, then it is just a funnel cloud. It becomes an actual tornado when it extends from the base of that cloud and also touches the ground as well. Also, if you've ever been at the beach and you see kind of a tornado out over the water, that is technically a waterspout. Not a tornado because it is over the water. However, once it hits land, and sometimes they do move on land, then it will be classified as an actual tornado. So kind of looking at some of the tornado facts, and so you can kind of follow along too with your PowerPoint. The very first slide is just a very nice picture of a tornado, followed by another picture of a tornado. Then we're going to get into the average number of tornadoes in the United States. Yearly, the U.S. sees about 1,200 tornadoes across the entire country. Now, that's not equally distributed across the entire country. Some states obviously see many more tornadoes. Some states see very few, if any, throughout the year. So if you're looking at the map, places like New Hampshire, Vermont, they see less than 1 tornado per year. Nevada only sees about 2. Actually, California sees almost 11. But really, truly, the primary heart of the country is where we see the most tornadoes. That would be Texas, with a lot of tornadoes every single year, followed by Oklahoma, Nebraska, Kansas, and also up into South and North Dakota. Those states pretty much make up Tornado Alley, where we see the vast majority of our tornadoes, and I'll kind of explain why in a few more minutes. But we see a lot of tornadoes through that heart of this country. In Louisiana, we see approximately 37 tornadoes per year. They do occur from the northern half of the state all the way to the southern half, although those primarily anywhere from I-10 southward are attributed to landfalling hurricanes. If we did happen to have a hurricane at the same time, we see more tornadoes from central Louisiana and into the northern half of the state as well. So all in all, we do see about 1,200 tornadoes across the United States every single year. Most tornadoes in the U.S. are only about 500 feet wide, not very long, or very wide anyway, and travel on the ground for about 5 miles. Now that is the average, but the big tornadoes, those that are your EF4s, EF5s, they're going to be on the ground for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, sometimes even longer than that. So the average is 5 miles, about 500 feet wide. But again, those that are your EF4s, EF5s, they can be up to a mile wide, a half mile to a mile, and then of course stay on the ground for much longer than that. There is a very wide range, like I said, of tornado sizes. Probably the shortest was only on the ground for about 7 feet, so not very far. But again, some will be on the ground for much, much longer than that. In fact, the largest tornado that we had on record was in May 22nd, 2004. That happened in Oklahoma, and it was about 2.5 miles wide. So think about that the next time you're at the gym, you're on the treadmill, and you run for 2.5 miles. It's a long ways. That's how wide that tornado was. And then there was also one on May 31st, 2013, that was also in Oklahoma as well, and that one was about 2.6 miles wide. So, again, They can be a whole lot wider. So kind of back to where we were talking about the average number of tornadoes. Some states, especially like Texas, they do see the majority of tornado activity, but again, it's a very big state, so there's a little bit more acreage for those tornadoes to take place. Just to kind of look, again, with the PowerPoint, January through December, the number of tornadoes per year. You'll notice that we are seeing kind of an overall increase in the number of tornadoes. There's some fluctuation in there. Some of the high points were in between 2000 and 2005. We had another spike at around 2011. Also one a few years earlier at about 2008 or so. So there's some kind of ups and downs, but the overall general trend has been more tornadoes since the early 1950s, because this is the number of tornadoes per year from 1950 to 2012. And there's, some kind of back and forth on why that is. Number one, is it a cause of global warming that we are seeing more tornadic activity? Or is it just that we have more people? We have more people spotting tornadoes. Back in 1950, the population wasn't as large as what it is today. Tornadoes now, we see them on radar. We have people who go out and spot them, who make their living doing that. So is it just that we're seeing more tornadoes? Or is it just that we have more people to actually spot them? Because if you think back to the 1920s or even 1900s, or you go back even further than that, there were probably a lot of tornadoes. There just wasn't anybody out there to actually see it. So a little bit of kind of give and take with some people who debate that and how it goes. But this is what we kind of find interesting right now. The next slide shows the U.S. tornadoes, the tornado days by year. That is actually declining. So we're seeing more tornadoes per year. That's going up, but the actual days where we're seeing tornadoes, that's actually going down. What we're seeing more are outbreaks of tornadoes. A period of at least 24 hours where we're seeing hundreds of tornadoes. 24 to 48 hours and hundreds of tornadoes kind of clustered all together as that storm system moves from west to east. So it's kind of interesting. We're not seeing as many just like one-off tornadoes here and there. We're seeing them more kind of in groups. And a lot of those tornadoes are very, very dangerous. I'll show you some of those in a few more minutes. But for right now, that is the end of video 1. So come back and we'll have video 2.